Welcome to the Yo Hockey Show. We are here to talk to you about the story of Utah Christ, our leader of Mormonsville, and we would love you to join us. Anyways, welcome to the Yo Hockey Show. Boom, bang, there's your little gunshot thing there. Welcome back, and we are here to talk about the Utah Hockey Club, a team that has yet to play a single game, but I have a daring claim that I think they might not be that horrible in their beginning inaugural season as a completely new franchise with no previous history. And which is kind of fun to watch because, we are going to be able to watch, the guys that, build up this team, the guys that, set new records and stuff. And I know we can do that with Seattle and Vegas, but Utah, I don't know, there's something interesting about it, even though no one really cares about this team. Salt Lake City is a pretty mundane, no one cares about, capital city. And it's just overall, the state, no one cares about Utah, really. And the only people that, cared about this team was oh, Arizona sucks. And then they moved to Salt Lake City. And it's oh, not Quebec. Ah. No one cares about this team. And I think it's kind of funny. And I don't really, just nothing's going for them, right? The New Jerseys, I know they're only for their inaugural season, but no one cared about that. No one cares about, their moves. No one's, there's just no chitter-chatter about this team at all. And that's what's to be expected when they move to a place like this. But everyone wanted them out of Arizona. This is what you get. So let's talk about this team that I think could have a pretty interesting roster out there that might make for pretty exciting hockey, right? And I'm going to talk all about it. So let's look at the team that they're going to be putting out on the ice in Salt Lake. So Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton, and Nick Schmaltz is a top starting line. Makes sense to me. I mean, maybe Logan Cooley could take that top spot too, but a team like this, they probably want to spread out the talent because that's going to be one issue that I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. But really, I guess I'll talk about it now. The top-end talent on this team is where the biggest weakness comes in, right? Because as much as Clayton Keller, to me, is absolutely a top 10 winger in the NHL, and if he was with any other team like Tampa Bay or with Vegas or the Rangers, he would be an unreal talent that would get all the news and everyone would be talking about him on X or something. There would be multiple just fan bases for the kid, right? But instead, he's in Arizona and Salt Lake where just no one really cares about his presence there, right? So Keller being a top 10 winger in the NHL is with Barrett Hayton, a top 5 overall pick that just has never even come close to living up to the hype that he was supposed to come in at, which is one issue that came with the Coyotes and why they had to move, is that they couldn't put together a good team until now, But anyways, Barrett Hayton, not really an amazing centerman, and if you're going to be a really good team in the NHL, you have to have that amazing, centerman, right? Whether it's a team that's competing for a wild card spot like Seattle, or even just a team like the Senators too, right? Any team that is wanting to win games, that number one centerman position is a must-need role. Just has to, right? That is the biggest part of the ice, right? Centerman build is what you build around, right? And Barrett Hayton, Cooley for the future, sure, but right now, not really. So top-end talent-wise, Hayton and Schmaltz isn't great accompaniment to Clayton Keller, because Keller is not a goals first guy, right? He's a playmaker. He's an assist guy. He's going to score goals, but he's going to be a 30 goal scorer. He's never going to break it. Well, maybe once his career get in the 40s, right? But he is a 30, 35 goal scorer that gets 70 assists, right? That is the peak of what Clayton Keller's game would be. And I know he's not going to get that, but you get what I'm saying. And with Barrett Hayton and Schmaltz, or anyone really else on this team currently, I just don't see him getting to that potential of over the line and winning those big games, right? Even a guy like Gunther, who will be a great skilled goal scorer, I don't see him being able to feed him those pucks quite yet. The second line with Lawson Krause, Logan Cooley, and Gunther, it is a nice offense. That is a very offensive line, right? Logan Cooley, Krause being a hidden gem on the Coyotes roster, and Dylan Gunther, two snipers, two guys that are going to score goals, and Logan Cooley sat in the middle. That is a great line, but once again, that is a great line in in theory, but not to go over the top with. And then you get down really to Michelli, Bukestad, and Doan, where Michelli being a great assist guy, a great playmaker, with Doan giving Josh Doan that opportunity to play with like that kind of guy to feed him the puck and find those open lanes will be great for Doan's starting career and really try to earn that Calder Trophy race. But to me, it's once again, that is a solid third line. And once you get to the fourth line, like Kerfoot, McBain, Stenlund, I really like Kevin Stenlund with the Panthers this season, but it's kind of giving me the Seattle Kraken not last year, but last season, where they made the playoffs against beating the Colorado Avalanche, is that this feels like a team full of second liners, right? All of these players, maybe not like a Bukestad or a McBain, but it feels like this team is all like a very well created depth team, but has no punch. You know, they've got that, they don't have a killer on this team or a killing unit out on this team, right? And that's the biggest key. Because sure, they have like Keller, but they need that other spice, right? You can't just win the Stanley Cup with Tkachuk. You need Barkov. You don't need, and not just Barkov, you also need a Reinhart. You need all these layers, right? And they don't have that peak of the pyramid, right? It feels like they all are a amazing base for a pyramid. And they don't have that over the time killing offensive but that offensive line that eats a lot of minutes every night and punishes other teams. And we know for the regular season, that's what you need, right? For the playoffs is a different story because, you know, a team like Seattle, right, can be very interesting in the playoffs, maybe not so much during the regular season. But a team like the Maple Leafs that are highly offensively powered and like the Oilers that can score a ton of goals during the regular season, have a bunch of guys get to 100 points, that is going to be way more effective than what the New York Islanders bring to the table, or the Blue Jackets a couple years ago, right? Teams that are very well formed as a whole unit for the playoffs, but during the regular season struggle, right? And that is kind of how I see this offensive team, is that they have some really good, nice scorers, but nothing really to batten down the hatches, right? They have like a nice fixture, but they just cannot kill the other team. Then the defense and goaltending, right, to back all this up, is interesting to me still, because the defense of bringing in Sergachev and John Marino is a pretty nice addition to this team. Durzi, Valimaki, two more offensive guys, especially Sean Durzi, 42 points I think he had this season. He had a great season. He's only getting better. Great talent, great offensive player. Sergachev to add to him, a guy who I think has really earned like a number one spot on a team. And especially a team like this where he will be the number one defenseman. I think he will do great in that position. And then with Marino and Valimaki, it's just like you have some good defensive-minded players plus some good offensive breakout players. Then the final pairing of like Cole and Kesselring. Kesselring could also be like a Soderstrom too. And also same thing up here, right? They have some AHL players that they could bring up in like Carconi or like Jan Jenik or Nate Smith that could maybe break the roster as well. But that's obviously fourth line pairings. It doesn't really matter at that point, right? But the defensive options, right? The top four especially is where things are like strong and they can be competitive. But it's the type of defense that needs that offensive punch to push them over the line. This isn't like an Islanders or a Blue Jackets or like the Blue Jackets when they had like Gavrikov and Jones and Werenski was like just like a solid shutdown team. With the Islanders, you had Pollock, Dobson, Pollock, like all their like depth centermen that just like go out there with the goaltending. They just shut down all the other teams. It was so hard to score against, but they couldn't score. This team to me, it's like they're neither of those two options. They're not super strong on offense, and they're not going to shut down any teams defensively. Goaltending-wise, Connor Ingram can be a very solid goaltender and can be he was amazing at the beginning of the season. Vejmelka is... he's shown flashes of being a really good goalie, but he's very inconsistent. And he is definitely the goalie that is not going to be the number one guy. He is going to be a goalie that can be hot and have a hot streak, but needs that defense in front of him, right? Ingram is interesting. He's shown this year that he can be an amazing shutdown Vezina level playing goaltender for a solid little while, but he needs that. He can't do it the whole season. He needs the help from the offense and defense to help off the pressure. And to me, it's that whole team paints that same picture to me, is that none of it is super strong or amazing in one area. And it's giving to me the type of scenario where this team is good and will be in the hunt for a wild card spot, right? They'll never be like fully out of the race, but especially at the beginning. And this is my prediction for Utah, is that they're going to start off very hot, right? They're a brand new team out of Arizona, moving to a new state, brand new franchise, and especially for a guy like Clayton Keller, who maybe wants to be like the names guy of this team, where he is Mr. Utah and has like by the end of his career, he's the leading guy with like 560 points or something, and he's the one that sets the marker for the end of his career before he moves on to like, I don't know, the St. Louis or something, right? To me, that's kind of what Keller gives to me, right? That's what this team is going to be, is they're going to get off to a hot start and play very well, surprise some teams, because they have that depth, and we've seen that happen in the past before, where these teams that get off to a hot start are usually like very solidly built all around and have a hot... I mean, look at Buffalo. Every single year they start off hot, and then they falter way off the cliff. And that's how this team is giving to me, is that they're going to start very hot. You have like a solid 5-game winning streak to start the season. They lose a couple games, but they get back on it, and they're like in the hunt. They're like second or third in like the Pacific Division till like November or something. And then in December, things start to get a little wavery. They start to fall off, and that's when like the really good teams like Edmonton and Vegas really get into gear, and they really go over the line, and they own the division. They pushed back to like fourth, and then that's when they finally have their bad like couple weeks that every team goes through, but it really depends on how bad the team is. They go really far off the cliff, and by the end of the season, it's like they're like 6-7 points out of the playoff race, and it's like they could maybe win a few games and get closer, but the teams in front of them are just better than them, and they just can never get in. So to me, going from this year with like 77 points, I feel this team is like the type where they can get to that 84, 85 points, but they're still like 6, 7, 10 points maybe behind getting into a playoff spot, and they're just still that far away from getting into the playoffs. And that is how I see Utah, is that it's going to be a team that starts off hot, wanting to make history, but things are just going to get stale because they're going to get out of the media loop. No one's going to start caring anymore. They're going to fight because their first game is technically, really, in my eyes, the starting night to the season, because October 4th is where the Devils play the Buffalo Sabres in the Global Series, but I don't count that as the start of the NHL. They play on the October 8th, starting in Utah against Chicago, so they're going to have a pretty bad team to play up against. They're going to shut down Connor Bedard, win that game, and they're going to start off hot, and they're going to go on, and I think they're going to win a few games in a row, and that's just how I see this going, is that this is going to be a team where they have a fine year, but it all falls apart. They just kind of go lame, and then just they disappear for the playoffs to begin, and no one thinks about Utah again. And to me, it's just, I don't know how to see this, because not Nate Smith, what's his stupid name? Whatever. The guy that owns this team, Mr. Smith, he said that he wants to be competitive out the gate, and they're going to be competitive, but it must be hard to kind of attract some certain talents to this team, like a number one centerman, like a Lindholm or something, right? Because you need that number one guy, and they just don't have it. Centerman-wise, they're very weak, and unless Logan Cooley can go from his fine rookie year and get into like the 60s or 70s of points, I just don't see that happening this year, right? The rookies never usually do that. Usually they do a fine rookie year, slump the next year, and then they get into it. Or they do marginally the same this second season, right? And especially being paired up with guys like Gunther or Doan. And even if it's not Gunther or Doan, right? You pair them with like Schmaltz, but then Gunther goes up, and I don't know. It is a very interesting team. And regardless of anything, to me, it's just a team that's going to have some middling players and is going to be mid all around. They don't have anything that strikes out as amazing to me, and they have a couple of really good young guys on this team. But to me, overall, it's just going to be whatever. It's going to be a whatever year, and it's going to be a year where everyone's like, oh, yeah, it was a good launching point for them. But really, it depends on how things go from here, right? And they have a lot of good prospects that are going to go very good in the future. But for this season, I think they're going to start good, be very hot at the very beginning, but are going to fall off in the second half of the year. That is my prediction. So thank you for listening to the story of Utah Christ, I guess. And until next time, I guess that's all I gotta say. So thank you for watching this, and until next time, I hope you have an amazing day. And if you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. It'll make me happy. Look, like that. And until next time, Two Sweets, have an amazing day, and ta-ta for now.